You meet someone for the first time. A handshake, a glance. Maybe half a second of eye contact before either of you says a word, and already your brain has decided something about them, trustworthy or not, safe or not, someone you'd help, or someone you'd avoid in a dark parking lot. You didn't choose to make that decision. It happened before your conscious mind even caught up. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than first impressions matter. Your brain isn't reading a stranger's character. It's running a survival calculation your ancestors couldn't afford to skip. Here's the strange part. That calculation takes about 1/10 of a second, faster than a blink. Faster than you can form the thought, I like this person, or something feels off. By the time you're aware of a feeling about someone's face, your brain has already finished the math. Psychologist Alexander Todorov at Princeton spent years trying to figure out exactly how fast this judgment forms. His team showed people faces for just a fraction of a second. 60 milliseconds. Barely enough time to register that a face was even there. And still, people rated those faces for trustworthiness, consistently, predictably, the same way they would if they'd stared at the face for a full minute. Give someone more time to look, and their opinion barely changes. The verdict was already in. So what is your brain actually looking at? Not the eyes alone, not the smile alone. It's a whole shape. Todorov's research found that trust judgments track closely with how closely a face resembles an expression of happiness or anger, even in a completely neutral, resting face. A face with slightly upturned mouth corners and wider eyes reads as safe. A face with a heavier brow and downturned corners reads as a threat. None of this has anything to do with the actual person. It's about which emotional expression their resting features happen to resemble. Think about what that means. You are, right now, walking around wearing a resting face that other people are quietly filing under trustworthy or not based on nothing you did. Based on bone structure. Based on the muscles that happen to sit a certain way when you're thinking about nothing at all. That should feel unfair. And it is. But it isn't random. It's a leftover instinct, and to understand it, you have to go back a lot further than job interviews and first dates. For most of human history, meeting a stranger was not a social nicety. It was a gamble with your life. Your ancestors lived in small bands, maybe 50 people, everyone known, everyone predictable. An unfamiliar face showing up at the edge of camp wasn't just new. It was unknown. And unknown meant unpredictable, and unpredictable meant dangerous until proven otherwise. There was no time for a background check. No time to watch someone's behavior over a few weeks before deciding whether to let them near your children or your food stores. The decision had to happen fast, using the only information available in that first glance. Facial structure, expression, posture. Micro-signals your conscious mind never had to learn. Because natural selection had already done the learning for you over hundreds of thousands of years, one bad guess at a time. The humans who hesitated too long around a genuine threat didn't get a second chance to update their model. The ones who read faces fast enough, even imperfectly, survived to raise children who read faces the same way. That's the wiring you inherited, not a character judgment. A threat detection shortcut, running underneath your conscious mind, dressed up as an opinion about a stranger's personality. Here's where it gets stranger, though. This system isn't just fast. It's also remarkably confident and remarkably wrong. Neuroscientist Ralph Adolphs, who has spent decades studying how the brain processes emotional signals from faces, found that a small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain called the amygdala lights up within milliseconds of seeing an unfamiliar face. In plain terms, the amygdala is your brain's early warning system. The part that tags things as potentially dangerous before you're slower. More analytical thinking gets involved. The amygdala doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't care that you have no actual information about this stranger's history, intentions, or character. It fires off a verdict anyway, and that verdict feels like certainty. Even though it's closer to a guess dressed up in the costume of intuition, and here's the twist that should make you a little uncomfortable. Study after study has shown that facial trustworthiness ratings do not reliably predict who is actually trustworthy. A 2014 line of research, led by psychologist Nicholas Rule, found that people are only slightly better than chance at using a stranger's face to predict real-world honesty or dishonesty. Slightly better than a coin flip, wearing the confidence of a courtroom verdict, which means your brain isn't reading truth off a stranger's face. It's reading resemblance. Resemblance to safety or resemblance to threat, patterns etched into you by ancestors who needed speed more than accuracy. Speed over accuracy made sense on the savannah. A wrong guess that made you overly cautious around a friendly stranger cost you nothing but an awkward moment. A wrong guess that made you too trusting of a dangerous one could cost you everything. So evolution built you to err on the side of paranoia, and to feel absolutely certain while doing it. Now think about where that same wiring shows up today. A hiring manager glances at a resume photo and forms an impression before reading a single qualification. A juror looks at a defendant's face, and whether they'd admit it or not, that face quietly colors how believable the testimony feels. Political candidates with faces rated as more competent-looking in split-second experiments win a disproportionate number of real elections, a finding Todorov's lab documented directly by showing people brief glimpses of unfamiliar candidates' faces and asking them to guess who won. None of these judgments are about character. They're about the shape of a jaw, the resting position of a mouth, the width of a brow. Ancient software, still running, still being trusted with modern decisions it was never built to make. And it isn't only judgments about others. It happens to you too, every single day, in ways you rarely notice. Someone forms an opinion of you before you've said a word. Before your first sentence, before your handshake even finishes, a verdict has already landed in a stranger's amygdala, built entirely from the shape you happen to be born with. You can't opt out of triggering this system in other people, and you can't fully opt out of running it yourself. But you can start noticing when it fires, that flicker of unease around someone whose face you've barely seen, that instant warmth towards someone who just seems trustworthy. Neither one is information about them. Both are a 100,000-year-old alarm system doing exactly what it evolved to do, in a world that no longer looks anything like the one it was built for. So the next time you meet someone new, and a verdict about them lands in your mind before they've spoken a single word, remember what actually just happened. Your brain didn't read their character, it read a shape. And it decided in 1/10 of a second whether that shape looked like safety or looked like danger. The same way your ancestors once had to, standing at the edge of camp, watching a stranger walk out of the trees.